Derek, I brought Chris in because Chris is just far my superior when it comes to all things philosophy, apologetics, and I just thought that he would be a good person to talk to.
So I describe myself as the...
¿Hablas español?
Hablo español, sí.
Sí, bueno. Pues yo nací en Chile y también he vivido en Guadalajara y Ecuador.
Oh, wow.
Las Islas Galápagos y todos, muchos lugares.
Qué bonito. Muy bien. Bueno,
but I think we should stick to English.
En español. For everyone to live. Awesome. Oh yeah, so my name's Chris. I describe myself as an ex-atheist. And so I spent pretty much the last 15 years of my life identifying as an atheist. And then I abandoned that really fairly recently, actually. It's only been a few months when I started getting involved with what were my changing beliefs. And that's why I met Chris, actually. He's a missionary at the campus where I work. And he also invited me to his church at the time when I hadn't been in church in over a decade. I guess the best thing we can do now is jump into one of the arguments. Since nothing about the universe necessitates that it be there, we have to find something external to the universe to explain why the universe is.
Well, what about a simple quantum field? We know quantum fields exist. We've actually done quite a number of experiments which confirm the existence of the quantum realm. And the universe can be a result of a quantum fluctuation. That's one of the most elegant theories or hypotheses for the existence of the universe. All you need is a simple quantum field, and everything else can follow from that.
We still need a reason for why that quantum field is there. Nothing about the quantum field makes it necessary that it be there.
That's true, but if you can say the same thing about the concept of a deity, a god.
Right.
There's nothing that says...
I haven't gone there quite yet, but I want to make sure we're clear on the idea of a quantum field.
Well, I think I see where this is going, in the sense that you're going to say that a god would be the necessary being that does have to exist in order for everything else to exist. There has to be that as the first cause, right?
Not necessarily, but we can go there. What I want to make clear first is the strength of the argument when it says that not a stone, not a rock, not the universe, not a quantum field could be sufficient to explain themselves. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily, because a quantum field could be if time and space itself came into existence with the formation of the universe, then a quantum field would be an eternal factor. Eternal is not even a really good word if you don't have a sense of time, but if a quantum field can fluctuate and create universes, then there would be essentially an instantaneous creation of potential an infinite number of universes, and that quantum field could be that very necessary origin of first cause.
Well, let's deal with that for a second. Now, I'm not an expert in quantum fields, so I'm going to try to simplify this argument a little bit more. So I take it a quantum field is a thing or some type of object, the way that you're imagining it. It is not it's something concrete and not some abstract thing like a Platonic ideal, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So now let's imagine a quantum field is something like a lake of water, and the lake of water is just sitting there. Now, from what I've gathered you've said, in order for that lake of water to produce something different in kind, then we can imagine the lake of water undergoing some type of change. So we have this quiet lake of water, and then at some point...
Well, the quantum field is not quiet. It's constantly in flux with constant popping particles in and out of existence. It's inherent to the quantum field. So it's more like a lake that's already constantly churning, if you want an analogy for it.
So let's imagine our water just boiling then. The water is boiling from eternity, correct?
Yeah, although time may have no concept beyond the existence of our universe. It may
Well,
have. We don't know.
You brought up eternity, not me. You
Yeah,
said something.
well, that's
about
what I said. Eternity was an eternal quantum field is may not have any meaning if you don't have an existence of time. But
Okay, so
I'm
are you
using that
committed to
to just say
eternal-
that if there is time, then it would be essentially eternal.
Okay, so just to get a sense, are you committed to an eternal quantum field, or
No, because we don't know. All we know is that we can calculate everything from the Big Bang forward. Actually, a fraction of a second after the Big Bang forward. But we can't go any further beyond that back in time because, well, for one, the concept of time is essentially meaningless. And second, we don't have any concrete evidence of what exists prior to or outside of our universe.
so you grant that the quantum field could have come into existence too? And if that's true, then it follows that it isn't necessary then.
Yeah, that's true. It's possible. We don't know. There's no way to know.
Okay.
It's the same problem with God in that example. You know, there's the people will define God as as a required being, the first cause, essentially, but they won't give the same characteristic to a quantum field, and that's called special pleading. That's fallacious reasoning right there.
Do you see how much faith you have?
Faith? Where have I mentioned any faith in anything?
You're willing to stake your entire existence and worldview on a not known?
No, there's absolutely no faith involved in this. I'm saying this is one of the possibilities.
All right, man.
As far as we know, the difference between
That's
that
all
is
right. I think I'm okay saying it could be eternal. So let's take it from a different angle then.
okay.
Now you'll grant that the universe begins to exist a finite time ago.
Yep.
So
About
if the
13.8
universe
billion
began to
years.
exist a finite time ago, that means that there must have been an event in the quantum field that made it the case that universe began to exist.
Correct.
Namely, it was a particular boiling point, for example.
Right. For our local
It was a
universe.
particular boiling point that caused, and I'm only doing this to illustrate, then we can see how this doesn't actually save us from the argument from cosmology, which Leibniz presents, because we haven't actually accounted for why it is the case that the universe should come from that. And so the way I've seen people describe this is they'll say, well, it's kind of eternally kind of just spitting out universes, right? Is that kind of...
Yeah, but if there's no time, then it's all essentially occurs instantaneously.
So what
That's
makes
one
it the
possibility.
case that this universe comes into existence at some point? What is it that makes it the case?
In a quantum field, you have a fluctuation. That fluctuation would result in negative energy, which is gravity, and positive energy, which is energy. And the sum total of that is zero. That is nothing. So a universe that is expressed that way will result in gravity and energy, which we see in our universe, which can be a huge amount, as we can see in our universe. But the elegant thing about that is that if you add up all the negative energy and the positive energy, the sum is zero, which is essentially a universe from nothing.
I'm confused as to whether you're committed to a universe from nothing or a universe from quantum field.
Well, that's nothing is in
Quantum
quotes.
field wouldn't be nothing.
Exactly. But it's essentially what we would call nothing. If you remove all matter and energy from any particular point in space, you would say there's nothing there. But in reality, there is. Once you get down to the quantum level, there is this constant churning and popping into and out of existence of quantum particles. We call that nothing because that's the common term people would use to something that contains nothing that we recognize. But in reality, it's not entirely nothing. It's not absolute nothingness, which is interesting because a lot of people think that who make the argument for God say that God created the universe out of absolute nothingness. But there's no evidence that absolute nothingness could ever exist, that the concept even makes sense.
Okay, so if I have your argument correct, then it seems that you're committed to an eternally existing thing, or possibly eternally existing thing.
You're saying committed, though. Committed is not the right term, because this is only one of several possibilities for the explanation for the universe. It's just one I happen to find the most elegant, but I would never commit to any of those without actual
Well, I'm not referring to the quantum field. I'm saying that you're committed to something that was eternal. And then that thing, whatever it might be.
No, all I can say is, based on what physics we have, is what happened since the Big Bang. Before that, it's basically speculation and predictions based on theories or hypotheses in physics, string theory, quantum mechanics, and the like. There are a number of different possibilities that have been brought up as hypotheses, but for anyone to commit to any of those based on just predictions but without the actual evidence is premature.
Right. I think I'm in agreement with you there. What I'm not saying is that you are committed to one of those theories.
I am not committed to any theory. That's correct. Or hypotheses. These aren't theories because they haven't been demonstrated over and over again. That's a cornerstone of science. A theory is an explanation that has been confirmed through multiple lines of evidence. Hypothesis is just the speculation, or the equivalent to the term speculation. So, yeah, these are hypotheses. These are not theories.
I see. So you're not committed to any one of these descriptions of how the universe might have come into being.
Correct.
But my question is, are you committed to there having been a process in which the universe came to being, as opposed to the universe always existing by eternity, through eternity, and that the only reason we see this universe as having a Big Bang is because there was something which was at eternity which produced this universe?
Well, there's two possibilities. One could be our universe is it, and the other is there could be up to an infinite number of universes generated by the multiverse, as the term that's typically used, or a metaverse. We don't know which of those two possibilities is actually reality, but it could be that there is an external universe that creates universes, or it could be that there's just our universe that spontaneously appeared out of a quantum fluctuation or some other source.
Now, the problem that I have with the quantum field is that there is no reason why the quantum field won't stay constantly just spitting things up and never creating the universe we have here. So what we have instead, what I think is a more coherent view, is you have a person who can decide at any point when the universe begins to exist, whereas trying to account for why some body might undergo a change that happens to randomly pick out the universe.
Why would there be an actual being, an actual thinking being at that, in a realm where no time doesn't exist? I mean, thinking itself is defined by a change in a change over time, a change in a brain over time.
You want to be careful with what I haven't mentioned thinking. I said a person. So
a person presumably thinks. If it doesn't think, it's not a person.
Right, but a person, the way that I'm thinking about it, the way you're defining a person is something that thinks in time, where I don't think that necessarily follows. I think that to say that that's the only kind of person that can exist, you have to actually defend an argument.
Well,
and it wouldn't be enough to say
all
that
evidence
only
we have, all evidence we have is that thinking requires a material brain. In fact, for all evidence we have, the brain is an emergent, or the mind is an emergent quality of a brain, and a brain is something that evolves through natural means. The idea that there's a brain that created, or a mind that created the universe, would be problematic because it goes against all that evidence. At least there's no support for the idea of a mind existing prior to this universe.
Even if we grant that all the minds that we're acquainted with are embodied minds or minds that have a brain that go along with it, that doesn't necessarily show that that's the only mind that can exist. You need an additional argument to demonstrate that.
You need to have evidence for the possible existence of a mind in a realm where no time or space or matter exists.
So the way I want to show this is in the same way, in not a dissimilar way to the way that you think of the quantum field having, there is no evidence to show that the quantum field actually exists.
Yes, we do know that the quantum field exists. We just don't know.
No evidence to show the quantum field exists in such a way that it will produce our universe.
That we don't know for sure, but we do have the precedent of observing the quantum realm creating virtual particles that pop in and out of existence. So that's a precedent.
In the same way, I say we have evidence that minds can make decisions, that they have the power to will things into existence. Now, we don't have evidence
will them into existence? What can you will into existence?
Excuse me. Let me backtrack a little bit. Thanks for pointing that out. We have evidence that minds have the power to will things. And if we have the evidence to show that minds have the power to will things, then from then we say, well, what might give a good explanation for why the universe comes into existence at the time that it does, without anything necessarily guiding it to show up at that time? Well, we say, well, minds are the type of things that can insert things, that can insert things by deciding or by willing, and that's peculiar to minds. We don't know anything else that can will things.
There's nothing a mind can do without, as far as all the evidence we actually observe, there's nothing a mind can do without a physical world already, a physical body. A mind by itself is essentially meaningless. It's a powerless thing.
But again, you're committed to a definition. You're showing a commitment. Sorry, I'm seeing that you might be showing a commitment to minds can only possibly exist.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying it can't only possibly. I'm saying that all the evidence we have supports the concept of minds being the emergent property of a material brain in space-time.
Yes, I will grant that. The only minds that we're aware of are the minds that we have here.
Right.
But if I look into the powers of what the mind gives me, the powers that are inherent in the mind involve the power to will. Correct?
Will, by will, what are you talking about? The power to will, the power to think? Well, is that what you're saying, or the power?
I am willing to speak now, and I can will to pick up this body here, which is a water bottle, and I'm doing that not by deterministic properties, but I'm doing it by my free will. I can do things. Mm-hmm. I can affect change.
Well, the claim that we have free will is also something that I would contend against, not only scientifically, but biblically as well. If the universe is deterministic, then every thought we have is essentially a product of what came before. It's a mechanistic or a mechanistic process that is has nothing to do with what people consider will.
You haven't demonstrated that the universe is deterministic. You've only posited.
I can show you some evidence for that, but at the very minimal, when you go down to the molecular level, everything works like a machine. Essentially, it's chemistry works like a machine. Molecular interactions work like machines, and you work your way up, and every step of the way we have something that works on a purely cause and effect type basis. There's a possibility that quantum mechanics can introduce variables of randomness, but even that randomness is completely random. It's not something that anyone can control, which means that the evidence indicates that free will, or even the concept of will, is an illusion that that doesn't actually have any support beyond the personal experience that we feel we have free will. And there are good evolutionary reasons why we would feel like we have free will, mainly because that gives us motivations. But the thing is, you're looking for absolutes in a number of questions that you've asked here. You're looking for, am I committed to this? Do I believe this? Is this the way?
Right.
I'm not actually presenting things as a certainty. I'm presenting the evidence, which will suggest what something is. But I can never claim that any explanation is true. And I don't think anyone can make such an explanation. In fact, science is based around the whole concept that explanations are always open to further evidence, and thus no explanation can ever be determined to be true.
I think that is right. And I just want to remind you that when I started this, my commitment was to show that there was a coherent way to show that classical theism can explain the world. I didn't say that, for example, you didn't have a coherent way. I said that there's a coherent way. And so when I'm saying something like you haven't been able to demonstrate something, I'm only emphasizing the fact that you cannot rule it out logically and you cannot rule it probabilistic. And that's sufficient for me to show that it's coherent.
You could make up anything then. And if I couldn't come up with evidence against that, you could say it's coherent. I mean, if you have no evidence against the idea of unicorns holding things down, then you could say that's coherent. But there's no evidence for it. So coherent is not an argument alone.
Doesn't have any power, any explanatory power. So just by talking about unicorns, there's no explanatory power found there. We don't arrive at anything of a coherent picture. All we have is something ad hoc you just throw in there. And
isn't that the same thing of religion? I mean, the same idea of theism. It's just ad hoc.
It's not the same, and I want to show you how. Now, the question that we have is, how can we explain that the universe comes into existence 13.5 billion years ago, and also committed to something that randomly produces it, and there's nothing in there to make it the case that it happens that way. I mean,
you can't just insert for an unknown. You can't just insert, okay, there must be a mind that does that.
But it's not an unknown. What's known is that the universe began 13.5 billion years ago.
13.8, right? Okay.
Well, sure.
0.7.
Let's say 13.8 billion years ago. If that's the case, then we have to find a good model that explains why it comes into existence then and not some other time. If you have an eternal soup or quantum field, well, what makes it the case that it'll change from just whatever was undergoing and to suddenly produce the universe? There's nothing there that makes it necessarily that it'll produce the universe.
Well,
right?
why insert a person that would do that when same characteristic can be applied to?
Let me show exactly why. The reason why we say a person, because persons have the peculiar power to insert events into the world without anything determining them to.
No, that's not true. You can't make that claim. I don't think you can make that claim without actual evidence to support that.
Right. And this is why I think it's important to show that you are committed to lack of free will. You're showing that you think that the world is deterministic, but I think you have to say.
Again, I'm not making a claim for what I believe. I'm making a claim that for what the evidence actually indicates. It doesn't mean that it's true. I could argue why gravity works using Einstein's general relativity, but maybe it is true that invisible pink unicorns are actually making it all look like that, but it's really something completely different than general relativity. There's no reason to believe in that, though.
I'm saying that when you say that my argument is too complicated because it possesses both a mind and the power to will, I'm saying, well, you're subject to the same criticism because you're positing a quantum field,
which we know exists,
behaviors which the quantum field has,
which we know exists,
and the particular behavior that will yield the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm maintaining that we know free will exists, and you've denied that.
No, I haven't denied that. I don't deny that free will may exist. What I'm saying is that there is no credible evidence for the existence of free will. All the evidence we have implies that free will does not exist. You seem to be, insisting on my saying that something's true or not true when I don't have the evidence for that, and nobody does. committing to a belief without sufficient evidence is anathema to science. It's against how the scientific method works.
Well, that isn't a very coherent statement to make if we have free will cast into doubt. I mean, if we're not free to reason, then how is science even accomplished? If let's say you're not maintaining that free will is definitely not a thing, but that you're insisting rather that it is very possible that free will isn't real, and from that it follows that we cannot even make an account of the will it would take to present to yield the universe. Now, if that's the case, that's a self-denying statement, because you're saying that science is a type of endeavor that is looking for probable or good explanations for things, and you're denying that the very component you need to have scientific discourse, which
no, you
is
don't.
reason.
There's no. You don't need will. You don't need free will to exist in order for reason to exist, in order for the scientific method to exist.
So what is reasoning if it's unfree? Are we talking about just deterministic laws?
Yeah,
How
essentially,
is that
yeah.
reasoning?
Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and cut us off. We can continue this discussion offline if this is something that Chris or you, Derek, want to continue. I'm going to go ahead and thank you both, and we're going to end the call.
Okay. Fair enough.
Good meeting. All right.
Yeah, it was a good meeting you.
Take care, guys.
All right. You have a good one.